Breaking tonight, less than 72 hours after some 500 people are killed or injured in a bloody attack on Paris, there are growing questions about security here at home, as the White House admits now that we are at war, but says no change in strategy is necessary. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. With an active manhunt still underway for at least one of those behind one of the worst terror attacks in European history, some of our nation's top Homeland Security voices are now suggesting the Islamic State terror group has the potential to pull an attack like this one off in the United States. In a moment, for the first time on camera here at the Kelly File, we will be joined by Fran Townsend, who is a top counterterrorism advisor to President George W. Bush. Judge Napolitano is here with the numbers of Syrian refugees we are planning on taking and what some states are now doing to stop it. Glenn Beck joins us on President Obama's assertion that this attack in Paris is just a setback and we have actually contained ISIS. And Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who has a death sentence hanging over her now, thanks to Islamic radicals, is here on the larger threat from radical Islam. In fact, it was just hours ago that the Islamic State terror group posted a new video to one of their numerous social media sites, promising to, quote, strike America at its center in Washington. While the group often posts messages like these, they can take on a chilling new impact when you see pictures like this one. Look at this. Look at this. From inside the French concert hall moments before the terrorists attacked, and then compare that image to this one. The horrifying aftermath. We have blurred the bodies as young men armed with shotguns went from person to person inside that same concert hall, attempting to send a grisly message to the world. With the death toll from this Paris attack likely to rise, our nation's leading Homeland Security voices are warning today, and have been warning for months, that this threat may already be on our doorstep.
We've arrested over 70 ISIS followers in the United States over the last year. That's more than one per week. We have investigations in all 50 states. We have 900 investigations ongoing in the United States, in the homeland, as I speak. You know, you just can't stop it all. And this threat is magnifying. It's not shrinking. It's not going away.
I certainly would not consider it a one-off event. It is clear to me that ISIL has an external agenda, that they are determined to carry out these types of attacks. It's not going to content itself with violence inside of the Syria and Iraqi borders. It's going to be looking abroad.
ISIL has used that ubiquitous social media to break the model and push into the United States, into the pocket, onto the mobile devices of troubled souls throughout our country in all 50 states, a twin message: come or kill, come or kill. Come to the so-called caliphate, live a life of glory, participate in the final battle between good and evil on God's side. Come to the caliphate, and if you can't come, kill where you are.
We begin tonight with Fran Townsend, former Homeland Security and counterterrorism advisor to President George W. Bush and president of the Counter-Extremism Project. Fran, great to see you tonight.
Good to be here.
So you heard it there from our officials, and just this weekend, the Wall Street Journal editorial board coming out and saying America's day is coming, and saying that President Obama needs to wake up to this reality. Your take on it?
Look, when you look at the numbers, you know, you heard Chairman McCall tell you, we understand that there are a minimum of 250 foreign fighters here in the United States. What do I mean? These are 250 people who traveled over, fought, were trained, and came back. In addition to that, the FBI has identified 1,000 subjects of investigations. What does that mean? That means individuals who have some tie or affiliation with ISIS. It may be a social media account, like Director Comey mentioned. It may be a common telephone number.
That's already here in the United States.
These are people, this is 1,250 folks here in the United States, 250 of which have actually fought. So what resources do they have against that? So if you ask the FBI, at least privately, what they'll say is they only have the resources to cover 60 to 70 24/7. That means the rest of that, they have to make judgments every day about priorities. They may be right or wrong. By the way, they don't have the data they used to have from the metadata program due to encryption. So they're making these priorities on limited information. And so, you know, you never know if the guy that you decided not to cover is the guy who's going to pull off an attack like the Paris attack.
President Obama says we're not changing our strategy. You know, we may enhance it, we may we're going to continue it more robustly, but we're going to continue doing the same old thing. If you were advising him in the way you advised President Bush, what would you tell him to do differently?
Well, look, it's one thing to say you want to defeat ISIS. It's another thing to have an actual strategy that is adequately resourced to do it. And that's the problem. One, there's not a strategy, but two, that's not adequately resourced. You look at the FBI's resources, MI5, the Brits announced today they're going to add in some 1,200 additional intelligence agents. We ought to be doing that.
We're not adding any.
No, that's exactly right. We ought to be adding law enforcement and intelligence officers to attack this problem. We ought to be trying to get them the tools they need, a revamped metadata program. We ought to be. President Obama held a cyber summit in Silicon Valley. He ought to go to his partners in Silicon Valley and talk to them on the encryption issue and the damage it does.
Those are the ones who can help us.
Exactly.
Right? We have the best experts at that in the world. Why can't they help us tap into these networks so we can hear what's going on? But here's the thing, Fran, is there something, we like to believe that we have some special magic that might protect us. Notwithstanding 9/11, people still believe this. Some special magic that might protect us, that might snuff out these plots before they happen. Is that true?
Well, look, we've got the best capability in the world, but unfortunately, when all you're playing is defense, you're bound to lose. The guy who's playing offense only has to be right once. You play in defense, you got to be right every day. That's a problem. Just the law of averages is against you. And frankly, I do think part of this is we've got to play offense. We've got to try to get them overseas. We need additional resources in Iraq and Syria. We need to increase the troop presence in Iraq. We need to expand the rules of engagement. I mean, there's a whole series of things. If I was advising the president, I'd advise him we got to play offense.
You raise a good point about increasing our resources here, first and foremost, which is not something that we've been told what he's going to do. Fran, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Well, for weeks now, we have heard warnings that there's no way to adequately screen Middle Eastern refugees coming into the United States. And now that Paris has been attacked, the Obama administration is getting serious pushback to its plan to allow 10,000 refugees from Syria into this country. In just the past 24 hours, a number of governors say they do not want these refugees. The House Homeland Security chair has called for a temporary stop to the program, and a leading senator is calling on Congress to reconsider funding for the effort. For his part, President Obama argues that doing that, disallowing them, would be downright un-American. Watch.
My first priority is the safety of the American people. And that's why even as we accept more refugees, including Syrians, we do so only after subjecting them to rigorous screening and security checks. We also have to remember that many of these refugees are the victims of terrorism themselves. That's what they're fleeing. Slamming the door in their faces would be a betrayal of our values. Our nations can welcome refugees who are desperately seeking safety and ensure our own security. We can and must do both.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is our Fox News senior judicial analyst. So now we know, Judge, that at least one of the killers in Paris was a man who had posed as a refugee coming in via other countries, but ultimately into Paris, claiming that he needed, sanctuary.
Well, that's the problem. I don't think anybody disputes what the president says, that some of these people are themselves victims and some of them are bona fide refugees. The problem is that hidden among them will be some of the worst people we could ever want in the United States, and people about whose presence we all should be fearful and fight politically to prevent from happening. The other problem that the president must know is that your ability to search a person's background is only as good as the database to which you have access. Right. Now, there are some limited databases. If these people travel to United Emirates or to Saudi Arabia, they might be on those lists. But for the most part, Syria is such a mess that there is an inadequate database in order to search the backgrounds of the people coming here. I'm not talking about their medical backgrounds. I'm talking about their political and legal backgrounds.
That's how it sounded this weekend when the White House was in sharp disagreement with Pete King about just how good the screening process is. Listen here.
We have very extensive screening procedures for all Syrian refugees who would come to the United States. There's a very careful vetting process that includes our intelligence community, our National Counterterrorism Center, the Department of Homeland Security.
And what he just said about the robust vetting of refugees is untrue. There's virtually no vetting because there are no databases in Syria. There are no government records. We don't know who these people are.
So now at least 8 governors are saying, we're not taking them. But there's a question about whether legally they're allowed to do that.
I think that the president will probably order the Department of Homeland Security to ignore the governors. My heart is with the governors, but let's face it, this is a federal issue. The president makes these decisions under federal law. There is no cap no cap on the number of refugees that he can admit here for political asylum purposes or for humanitarian purposes. But he has a paramount obligation to make sure the databases that they search exist and are up to date and have accurate information in them.
How are they taking what a mess Syria is? Whose database are we going to get their information
Congressman
from?
King is correct. Mr. Rhodes is speaking the political line. Congressman King is speaking the intelligence line. The databases don't exist. How can the president possibly assure us that these folks he's going to admit here will not have among their number the type of people that perpetrated that monstrosity Friday night in Paris?
Judge, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, when the president met the cameras this morning, he spent more than 40 minutes defending his plans for tackling these terrorists.
What I'm not interested in doing is posing or pursuing some notion of American leadership or America winning.
Up next, Glenn Beck joins us on the road ahead in the war on terror. Don't miss this. Plus, President Obama says you cannot equate events in Paris with the religion of Islam. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is here, a woman who has a death sentence hanging over her thanks to Islamic radicals. She'll discuss that argument. And then Chris Sirewalt is here on how this is already